Hi there, welcome to Pin Cut Sew. I have a good tutorial for you today, but I've been trying to make this for like 3 days and I keep having equipment problems. That's okay because the third time must be the charm. This is my third time trying to record this. But now that I have finished the project that I was recording, I get to show you the end result first. So I've been making this mini quilt. It says "Be Here Now." Isn't it cute? And I've been asked recently, and not so recently, I've been being asked for this for a while about free motion quilting, a tutorial for free motion quilting. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. It is not scary, not hard. I think people get intimidated by it because there's very few restraints and parameters, and we like things that have a method, right? And there are some tips and tricks to doing this, but my mom says the secret to free motion quilting is to just sit on one cheek and stick out your tongue. I think that's so funny because it's true. You're just sort of winging it. But it's also just really fun, and it can be very liberating to just free motion quilt your little heart out. And so I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks for how to do that today. Any machine can do it, even really old machines. So you don't have to have fancy equipment to do this. So this quilt, though, I wanted to tell you I made using this patchwork alphabet how-to manual from Allwell. I got this on Etsy. You can also get the print at home version, but I just got the one that's already in this cute little booklet that they sent me in the mail. And it's so fun because basically they just use, I think, like 4 little blocks to make all of the letters. So then in the back you have the guide to each letter. So you can make phrases, and then they tell you how to put little frames on them, not frames, but spacers, you know, in between your letters and stuff. And the possibilities are so endless. So I definitely want to make one next that says Pin Cut Sew to hang up here in my sewing studio. It's so fun. So I'll put a link to this how-to guide below so that you can go grab one if you want to. Really, really fun. Allwell does a lot of really fun stuff too. So on this quilt, you can see I'm doing like a zigzag pattern. A popular way of free motion is to do what's called stippling, which is like the little, I call them amoebas. I think they look like amoebas under a microscope. I don't even know if that's the right word. But that's what they remind me of because they're squigglies and they're meant not to intersect. I don't usually do that, but I know it's really popular, so I'm going to show you how to do that. And then on a quilt I made recently, I did the lines of loops. And the benefit to free motion quilting an entire quilt is that it ends up so crinkly and cuddly, and that's what I really love about it. So I love to do the lines of loops, but I also love to do just this straight zigzag quilting. I did that on this mini quilt also. You've probably seen this one before hanging up here in my sewing room or in other videos. This is actually the first thing I made when I moved here to this sewing room, and for my sanity, I had to make something, and this is what I made. So this is just like a free pieced little piece, and I really love it. So after I made this, though, I loved it so much I couldn't get enough, and I put it onto my iPad, and I learned from my daughter how to draw in Procreate over it, and I turned it into a sticker. So you can actually go get this sticker in my Etsy shop. I think there's 18 of them left, so I'll put a link to that too, because they've just been sitting here and I would love for you guys to have them. I want them in someone else's hands and sewing room. So I'll put a link to those, and let's see. I think I'm just gonna tell you what you really need for free motion quilting, and then we'll get started. Okay, so the things you really need for free motion quilting. I have made myself a little fake quilt sandwich with batting in between and a backing. And I'm gonna use that to demonstrate, but I'm also going to attach my free motion foot. Mine looks like this. Hopefully you can see. It's clear. Some of them have, like, mine has an attachment that's just metal and it's smaller, but this one you can see through, so I like this one better. And my machine is a high shank, so it attaches on my presser foot holder thing. I don't know what it's called. So yours might look a little bit different than this, but most machines do come with them because it's also called a darning foot. But I have also seen people, at the risk of their fingers, free motion quilting without any foot on there at all. You just use the needle. So if you feel like putting your fingers in peril, you go right ahead and try that. I think people who like it because you can see everything what you're doing. But I mean, I can see fine with this, and I'm too afraid to do it with just the needle. And then your sewing machine has a little lever that lowers your feed dogs. The feed dogs are the thing under the throat plate that move your fabric along on the bottom. But for free motion quilting, you're going to do the moving the fabric along. So you don't need the feed dogs to push it forward. So if you drop the feed dogs with your lever, then you'll be able to move your fabric any way that you want. And so some machines, after you push the lever, to lower your feed dogs, you have to look in your manual. Each machine is a little bit different. You might have to turn the wheel forward 1 stitch before they'll drop. And then when you put them back up, sometimes I used to, on my old machine, I got confused because I was pushing the lever to raise my feed dogs back up and I couldn't see them going up. That's because you need to take a stitch before they'll actually raise. So don't worry that your feed dogs are stuck. They're not. Even my oldest sewing machines, the ones from like the 60s, you can lower the feed dogs. So you can free motion quilt on anything. Darning was a popular thing to do back then when they took more care to repair clothing and stuff. So even old machines have this capability. And then, let's see. Oh, something you don't have to have, but is nice to have, are quilting gloves. These have like grippies on them because when you're moving the fabric, especially on a quilt that's bulky or heavy, it can be kind of a strain on your hands to kind of try to grip it and move it along. These just make it easier because your fingers sort of stick to the fabric and move it around. So these are nice to have. I will link you to some. I think mine are Fons and Porter brand, and I'll link you to those too. I think that's everything. So let's get started and I'll show you. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and replace this presser foot with my darning foot. I have some green thread loaded in my sewing machine that you'll be able to see it on my pink mini quilt thing. And then I'm going to just pull my top thread through the hole in my darning foot. My darning foot has a little screw on it where I can adjust the pressure of it against my fabric. So basically what you want it to do is when you lower your presser foot, you don't want it to clamp down so hard that you can't move your fabric around. You want to be able to move your fabric. Mine's a little tight right now, so I'm going to raise it up a little bit. Yours might not have this capability, and if not, that's okay. As long as you're not sewing anything extremely thick, it should probably be fine. Okay, so I want to be able to move my fabric freely underneath my foot, as you can see. Okay, let me put my quilting glove on. So to get started, I never like to just sort of take off sewing. I do, however, like to lower my speed control if your machine has a speed control. If it doesn't, that's okay, because since you're moving the fabric around at your own pace, it can be hard to move it in a really even way when you're also trying to focus on how consistently you're pushing your foot pedal. So if I lower my speed just a little bit, then I can floor the foot pedal and not worry about it while I move my fabric more evenly. So when I start sewing, I hold my tail and I just put my needle in my fabric. Oops, I forgot to lower my feed dogs. And so if you're sewing a quilt, you would start out here off of your quilt, you know. So then I put both hands here. I'm just going to move my fabric in a squiggly, I'll show you the row of loops like I did on my quilt. If you need to stop, say you need to stop and take out a pin or you need to readjust yourself, just stop by sewing a few stitches in place. Instead of like coming to a slow, you don't want to slow down and stop because then you'll have some stitches that are small, much smaller or bigger than the others. So then to keep going, you just sew in place and start up again. So there's my row of loops. See how nice that looks? It takes a little bit of practice to get your stitches nice and even, but those look pretty darn good. Check your tension on the back. If it's pulling a lot, you can lower your tension a little bit, or you can try making your stitches a little bit smaller. A new needle also helps if you're finding that there's inconsistencies on the back especially. So now I'm going to show you how to make the little stippling, like I call amoebas. You just want to start in a quadrant of your quilt, and then you're going to try to make small shapes without intersecting. The point of stippling is to avoid intersecting. I know I'm only wearing one glove, I just find this easier. So I sew a few in place. Oops, I already looped. Okay, see the little, look, I already intersected. I am terrible at this kind of free motion. My mom is really good at it, but I always intersect. But I don't actually like how these little amoebas look. So sometimes I do a cross between those two things if I'm doing an entire quilt, and I do purposeful intersected loops. See how cool that looks? I think that looks neat. I've done a t-shirt quilt for my aunt with this. It's actually a very fast way to quilt a large quilt. Let me make sure you can see that. Here's what we have. Here's the little amoeba stippling. Here's my loopy-loo stippling. And so another fun thing you can do, free motion quilting is really not limited to just quilts. If you are going to free motion on, say, just a piece of fabric, you would definitely want to interface it in the back, because free motioning on just a single fabric or even two together will cause bunching possibly. So you would want to use some interfacing for sure, or batting. You can also free motion on paper. You could make Christmas cards by making little snowmen, but one time I made these little bunny ornaments for my Easter tree, and this is how I did it. I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is how I made the Easter bunnies. I used a double layer of felt, and I just sewed circles. One big one. I'm going to do a figure 8 into another one. And then I made big ears. See how cute? And then I cut them out. Since they were felt, whoops, you can't even see that. Since they were felt, I could cut them out, and I put a ribbon for a hanger, and I put little pom-pom tails on them, and they were little bunnies for my Easter tree, and they were so cute. So you can sew on paper, like I said, but a lot of people don't know that, but you can. You can also cut out, like, what if you cut out little circles to sew around so that your little bunny had fabric prints behind it? That would be fun too. Some people are really good at this and can like write their names. Let me try that. See if I can write my name. Oh gosh, I'm already failing. Okay, it's not so terrible. It's not great either, but it'd be cute to put little buttons there for my eyes. Okay, so I hope that's given you sort of a good introduction. If you have questions, be sure and ask me those in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them. Really, this is just the kind of thing that takes practice, especially to get your stitches even. My stitches always tend to be kind of big, and so I always practice on something like this to where I can relearn again how to move the fabric around more slowly so that my stitches are smaller. But I've done entire quilts probably wrong and with too big of stitches, and they're still together today. So you know what? It's really not rocket science. It's actually very fun. There's a lot of creativity, room for creativity involved here. So I hope that you'll try it. And now I'm going to finish. I'm going to show you how I finished this quilt. Take you along a little bit. And maybe I'll make this into a sticker too, or maybe a postcard. I think that'd be really cute. Yeah, if you have questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.